As you may know, we did a webinar on the benefits of VSI OpenVMS for Alpha a few months ago, and I was supposed to present that, but I was feeling a bit under the weather. So Susan, who's sitting in the back, did that webinar. So again, thanks, Susan, for taking over. And after that webinar, Dan approached me and said, could we do a session at the bootcamp together where you talk about this and I add a bit from more like the end user consultant perspective, just to give it a little more cachet. Well, you know who I am, but I'll let Dan introduce himself before we get started.
My name's Dan. I've been dealing with VMS since version 1, so I'm probably one of the few here that's gone back that far. But throughout my entire career, I've been in the maintenance and support arena. I'm not a developer, never have been, never will be, and been doing direct customer support for that long. And I've been on both sides of the fence, both as the recipient of support services as well as the provider of support services. And I'm sure a lot of people I see here, I know are in the support arena. And we've all been in the situation where we say something to either our employer or who we're working for, and they don't believe us. And then the vendor comes in and says the exact same thing, and that's the best thing since sliced bread, right? So I think it's important, as much as everybody believes Camiel and everything he has to say is, of course, correct and true, having somebody that is outside of the organization and not getting paid, or at least not admitting it publicly from VSI, that saying the same thing will have a little more credence to it. And it's not to say that what they're saying is wrong or incorrect, but we all have a different perspective as either an independent provider or a recipient of the services. And I think it's important to get both aspects. And that's why I'm here today.
Right. So what I propose is that I just very briefly sort of repeat what Susan said in the webinar, and then Dan offers his take on it. And then we want to hear from you, and hopefully we'll have a bit of a conversation or discussion. So I'll skip this. We'll talk a little bit about long-term support, enhanced security, modern features, resources, stability, and in the end, we'll have some time for discussing our wish list. So long-term support, basically, if you're on an HPE version of VMS on Alpha, the last patch kit came out in mid-19. That's a while ago. Since mid-19, we've done about 50 ECO kits for VSI OpenVMS on Alpha, and of course, we had a lot of updates for layered products in open source. We found bugs as we were porting to x86 that we backported and fixed in the Alpha version. Same with some improvements. And where we could, we tried to keep Alpha and Titanium on par with x86. You have something to add, then?
Yeah, the only caveat to this that I've run across with my clientele has been some of them want to upgrade to the VSI version, but are somewhat restricted because of licensing. And I know I've spoken to you about this before. That's something that's under investigation right now to try to see if there's a mechanism that we can use to allow licenses to be moved from the HPE variant. And I'm not talking about VMS licenses. I'm talking about third-party vendors who can no longer provide a new license because they either don't exist or don't know what VMS is anymore. So that's something that's still under investigation, and I know that's why some of my clients are stuck at the HPE version, even though there are bug fixes that they would like to have and they kind of can't. So that's still in progress.
Yeah.
Just a nit, but I assume when you said backported bugs, you meant backported bug fixes.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
We also backported the bugs we introduced. But then you get fixed. Yeah.
Very well spotted. Anyone else? Yeah. Well,
a technical solution which has surfaced at other junctures has been impersonation of software version.
Software version impersonation, yes.
That for the purposes of a non-HPE issued license, a product issued for an HPE base, if you pretend to be HPE, blah, blah, blah. Now, there are two issues. One is obviously incompatible any subtle impact difference can cause a problem. But the one that's probably tractable administratively is I don't think HPE would, given your relationship, would be very objective to that.
Yes. Well, we'd have to explore that.
I'm just raising, this has been done before in similar contexts. I don't remember if VMS was one of the cases, but people have done this thing before. That war has been fought.
Yeah, I think Brian may actually have some experience with that, don't you?
I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV.
There you go.
Very smart. Anything else on this topic, or I will just move on? Oh yeah, this is like a moving list of all the ECO kits for Alpha up to June last year, or June this year. Long-term support. This basically shows 84201, 84202. This was before we had the plan to release in version 8.4-3. So we'll probably shorten these bars a little bit, but there will be an 8.4-3 bar that goes out to at least 2035. So we'll support an alpha version at least for the next 10 years and probably longer than that.
That's because all the C time functions failed.
That's 2038.
Yes.
That's we still have 3 years of runway there. Yeah, do we need to say anything else about support terms?
No. I'll skip
Okay.
the 7.3 stuff.
Jim has a question.
Oh yeah, Jim.
How are you taking patch kits which are unique to 842L2 and making them available for the EV7 flavor?
The EP7 flavor.
The alpha. I mean, I haven't seen certain. I haven't looked in a while either. But for the version of alpha that you built that uses the newer instruction sets.
That's the 2L2.
Yeah.
That's EV6 and newer.
Right. I thought there was an older one. Oh yeah, L2. So how are you taking L3 unique releases and patch kits and putting them into, or are you into the EP6, EP7 alpha stream?
Well, L3 is only integrity.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to figure out. So what we do when we maybe I can expand a little bit into how we keep track of all the different versions of VMS that we maintain. So we have a source code control system built on top of CMS, and on top of CMS, we have put a streams control system. We work with development streams. So we have every version you see here is a stream. The version that's currently in development is a development stream. Versions that have been released are remedial streams. So if we identify a bug, we then go back and see for all the remedial streams for versions that we still support, what is the most appropriate place to fix this bug? And generally, it's the oldest release where we can identify the bug. So if we're working on version 9.3 and we find a bug and we find out that that bug is present in version 842L1, 842L1 remedial is the stream where we put the fix. And then our streams control system that we've built on top of CMS takes that fix and applies it to the next newer stream. So it would apply it to 842L2. It then takes it from there and it applies it to 842L3. Now, maybe someone has touched that same module in the 842L3 remedial stream, at which point there will be an email message saying you need to fold your changes into this version, into this remedial stream. Then you merge your code. So if we fix a bug in 9.3, we often fix it in one of the earlier remedial streams and it propagates all the way down to what we're currently working on. And this is the thing that Git doesn't really offer us yet. So this is the performance version that was already mentioned. 2L1 runs on pretty much all alpha servers. I can run it on my old DEC 3000 AXP, which was like first generation alphas. 2L2 is the performance build that only works on EV6 processors and newer, but that happens to be all the hardware that's on our supported list, and all the emulators support the EV6 instruction set as well.
Even
So-
your ES40 emulator?
The ES40 emulator as well, yeah. So, like I said this morning, I'm hoping that with 8.4.3 we can basically stop doing this version and only do the version that runs on EV6 and later. It gives you a modest performance improvement, but it's for us to only keep tracking the release of one alpha version, and patches for one alpha version instead of two would be a big improvement in efficiency for us. So if anyone here is still running an AlphaServer 1000, let me know. If you're doing it for your hobby, that's fine. I do that as well. But in production, I wouldn't run anything like that.
No.
Do you ever come across that?
I have a 3000 in my house, yes. But commercially, no. I do have some earlier alpha servers that are run 2L1, but they are running Sharon emulator, and Sharon will also support the older boxes as well. But no, not commercially, no, nothing that right, that's slow.
And
Seems odd to stay, but yeah.
from what I've seen in the emulator world, the main reason for running an older emulator with an older chipset would be to run a version of the operating system that is so old it doesn't run on anything newer.
Right.
All right. Enhanced security. We keep updating TCP/IP. When we find a bug in TCP/IP, we update it for alpha. If there's some CV that we address it for alpha, titanium and x86. We put out new versions of OpenSSL. When we do 8.4.3, we will likely have OpenSSL 3.5 in there, depending on the timing. OpenSSH, new versions, keep pushing them out. Same for OpenLDAP. We've improved password management where you can have better rules for the complexity that your password needs to match. We offer that in our version for alpha as well. Newer version of Samba. Sounds like a no-brainer to me, but any concerns?
We just did an install of Samba 1.16-D, right? I think that's it. And we ran into trouble because it needed SSL 3, which we hadn't needed before, and we needed something else.
Well, it checks for a PQL, a default value for a PQL page file quota.
Right.
As opposed to the current value for the particular process, which I
or
okay.
PQL_M.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
it doesn't. The default quota wouldn't matter.
Why it was checking the sysgen parameter instead of the value for the process doesn't make much sense to me.
Huh.
I mean, I felt like that Samba version should have been, 2, because now you had different underlying requirements, right? SSL 3 was not needed for the previous version that we had running.
No, but we are taking the approach that where we can, we take products to use SSL 3 instead of the older SSL.
Understood.
And the newer SSL and the old SSL can live side by side on the same system.
That was my question.
But like what you said about looking at the defaults,
Right.
that sounds wrong. Did you file a bug report for that?
No, I didn't. I can. I'll send it.
Okay. If you want to send it to me, I'll file an internal bug report for that. Stability. And you actually added this slide to our
I
presentation.
did.
Thank you for that.
In the, at least in the healthcare industry, with which I'm more familiar than I want to be, there are regulatory requirements that the software be supported by the vendor, which is a little tricky if the vendor doesn't exist anymore, but there's ways to get around it.
We don't have a microphone.
So one of the reasons I brought this up is, at least in the healthcare environment, it is a requirement for vendor support. It gets a little bit tricky when you're running an older version under an emulator, and a lot of the healthcare stuff I'm involved with personally is older laboratory information systems that contain patient data. But some of them are lookup only because they're historical, which again, regulation requires you keep around for anywhere from 5 to 20 years. And sometimes it's quote forever, especially if it's pathology information. So that one is a little bit easier to get around the regulatory requirements because it's saying the system is old, it's no longer supported, but it's what I need to have around to have access to this archival data. That's a little less of a hiccup than modern systems which require vendor support. So one of the reasons I mentioned the Camiel is I like to see a VSI version of 7.3, because they don't support a version set at all, would be to make life easier for these clients that are stuck on version 7 because their vendors are no longer around to port it to version 8 and the sources aren't available either. So there's no way they can move forward, but they would like to have vendor support to check off that box from a regulatory standpoint. So that's something else that has to be kept in mind. And some places just have a policy that they want to keep things up with vendor support. That's a little less strict, and it's easier to get around if you say it's not available and this is why. But again, it's something that it's nice to have if you can to get everything up to modern support. And plus, it's also an insurance policy, as I say here, because that way at least you have somebody to talk to if something goes wrong, as opposed to, oh, we're stuck, what do we do? So that's the other part that's always an advantage to get to whoever the current vendor is for your particular product. So.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't really think that we can do a 7.3.2 version under the VSI brand. Maybe Rob actually can shed a little light on the problem you're encountering. What they're running into is a software from Cerner that sets up its own CLI instead of DCL. And apparently that runs into compatibility issues when you go to VMS 8.4.
Well, it's written macro. It does it does a lot of it. It does what DCL does, but on its own. It's one of 2 CLIs that existed. Oh, no. It does not run DCL at all. It replaces it.
That's first.
Well, look, it's 9 months of my life to port that silly thing from VAX to Alpha. So yes, I'm very familiar with it. It would be non-trivial to get it to run 8.4. Technically, I don't have access to the source to make it happen anyway. It's a sunsetted product, so it's kind of a academic exercise to a degree. But there are a lot of sites out there that are running this particular product under an emulator on VMS version 7. Actually, some are running on VAX 7.3. We're not even going to talk about that.
Well, without access to the source, I don't really see a solution.
There isn't one.
I mean, my guess is that it may also have failed on a V8 version.
It would,
right?
Yes.
So, on the other hand, I would think that our agreement with HP will prevent our releasing the 7.3Ls. But I'm also not a lawyer.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because we released a V8.4, which is really no different from releasing.
Well, I think part of it is like, do we still have like the tool chain that was used to build 7.3?
Yeah, you've got the problem we had earlier. If you release it and it says VSI, all the ancient, now extinct layered products and third parties looking for HP that Compaq as issuer will flood in the night. It's the same issue with the same resolution.
Yeah, that we can overcome.
It just flagging it for the record.
We know how to deal with rebranding, and we've done that before. But whether or not it would even be economically feasible for VSI to do is perhaps another.
Yeah.
Correct, because I do know a number of clients that are stuck on version 7.3-2 for that reason.
Yeah.
I'm also
Or similar.
slightly afraid I might lose my release manager if I pushed for this.
Yeah, no, I think this is a very difficult needle.
Yeah.
You tell them to trade 842L1 for 7.3-2.
I'm not sure that will work.
Yeah.
Shall we?
So the
Yeah,
number of
move on.
release screens still stays the same.
Yeah, it's kind of a
Yeah, it's
offshoot here.
yeah.
But
But we'll continue the conversation to
Sure.
see if we can work something out.
Sure.
Some modern features. Yeah, this is mostly open source stuff that we've ported. And if you're on a VSI version of VMS, this becomes available to you.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Else? Few resources that you can look at. We have a product page specifically for Alpha, like a landing page on our website. We have the roadmap that has Alpha products as well as Itanium and x86 and Alpha. We offer a free upgrade analysis where you send us a scan of your system and we go through the list of products that are installed and we flag any potential issues. We offer evaluation licenses. If you want to try out the VSI version of VMS without risk, you can get an evaluation license for a few months so you can give it a try. So if you are interested in any of that, you can contact our sales team. This is what the product landing page looks like. This is the roadmap, and like here you can see that V992 of OpenSSH. This is an old slide. We did a release for Itanium in x86 in August, and then we did Alpha in September. At least that was the plan back then. I think we slipped a month, about a month, I think. But yeah, but I think we slipped a month from what we said here. I think August became September and September became October.
I like the OpenJDK release 17.
Yes. So future, we have a new version in the planning, version 8.4-3. Like I said this morning, no real date yet, but I can give you a range of somewhere in the next couple of years. Depending on it mostly depends on our other planning, and we still need to define the scope of exactly what we're going to make an effort to backport. It's mostly a roll-up of all the patches and ECOs that we've done so far. So instead of getting 8.2L1 and then having to install 50 ECOs, figure out the order in which you can do them. Yeah, I know. We'll just have a new version for you. Updated SIPs, new version of OpenSSL, for instance, and additional backported fixes. Yes.
Observe that as a companion item, a patch roll-up as opposed to a new version would be useful for many clients, many customers who have administrative issues around a new release. They can apply patches to it fairly well, but when you talk about version number, that means a qualification, that means a vague, not vague, very specific, very painful set of processes.
I know that HPE for a very long time kept the version number the same, and you had updates that made a lot of changes.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of that.
I'm not. They agree and disagree.
Yeah.
Depend on the context. I've had clients say they can't change to a dash release because that is a change that requires this huge book to be filled out.
Right.
500 patches in a single batch? No problem.
It would be interesting for us to find out how many of customers who are like that are already on a VSI version of VMS. because that would largely drive whether we deliver this as a new version or as an update.
Or a remastered phrase it as 8.4, not 8.43, but 8.42 with upgrade, with cumulative update units. I know it's only naming, but it does affect your option.
It's naming, but it also affects our development process somewhat.
I'm just making
Yes.
the observation. Changes.
Jim,
Same Alpha licensing model, one license enables everything.
I think it's 2 licenses.
Yeah.
I think there's one for the OS and one for
One for
the
the
LP.
OS and one for later
Yeah.
products.
I have no plans around changing that. No.
And I know we've asked multiple times. The one thing that would help us, since we have access to 2 terabyte drives, are a DCL symbol that can hold 64-bit number.
Oh, yeah. 64-bit DCL or.
Yeah.
And what's helpful, I get -412 blah 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 when I get asked the size of my.
Oh, yes, you're running out of
Yes.
disk space.
Yeah, I'm running out of disk space. Oh, panic! How can I have negative this?
It's an issue we're looking at, but I can't promise anything at this time.
It's run it through FAO, and you can get an actual proper value. If you're just doing it for display purposes, you can just run it through FAO with the proper format, and you will see the correct value.
I'll try that.
Exclamation mark 10 UL.
Yeah, in fact, if you look at vmsinstall.com, that's done a lot in there. When it's doing comparison to ensure that you have enough disk space.
The problem you get is when you have pre-existing command procedures with fairly well that don't use a wide enough field and don't use unsigned.
I don't have anything else at this point.
All right.
Questions, discussion?
Now we can have a bit of a discussion to sort of like kick that off. We have a list of things that we know we pretty much cannot do. We cannot do a new version of Java on Alpha. I mean, yes, you can do everything if you have 200 engineers in 2 years' time. But for all practical purposes, we cannot do a new version of Java. We cannot do a newer C++ standard. We're not going to do any improvements to deck windows. And we're not going to have an entropy engine like we have on x86 on Alpha. Things that we hope we may be able to do is an improved C compiler to some extent. ISIS-SCSI support, I'm still hoping we can bring to Alpha. I have to warn you though, we're focusing on x86 now, and we want to get it out on x86 as soon as we can. Only after we have released it for x86 will we start assessing the effort it would take to backport that to Alpha and Itanium. And the same goes for NFS version 4. And then there's some things that we will do. We will do the version 8.4-3. We will do the cluster compatibility kit. OpenSSH team, we're also still planning to do MFA for Alpha when we do it for x86. I don't know if you have any wish list items to add.
No, most of the clients I'm dealing with are kind of not forward looking.
Okay.
I'm trying to be kind, but they're kind of it's not broke. I'm not going to fix it and not change much. So,
and I guess a lot of those are the customers who are still on HPE versions, and
unfortunately, yes, right. But working on that too.
Or if it is broke, we're still not going to fix it because it needs to be up all the time, and we don't care.
Yeah. Any forward-looking people in the audience?
The fact that you're talking about alphas should answer that question.
Right. Well,
no, there are people out there who've got code bases they don't have the capability and or budget to upgrade. So they will run Alpha until the world ends.
Right.
Well,
It's just
a lot of them don't have access to the source code for various sundry reasons.
Yeah.
Which creates a
yeah, I run into sites where they tell me they have a source backup, and I look at it, and it's got this bunch of holes in the middle from a botched backup 5 years ago.
Right. One of the things that we,
Because the titaniums are going out of support and can't go anymore.
right,
Yeah, I've done,
It's also the future.
I've had a couple of clients that have gone from their titanium version back to the alpha to get onto an emulator because there's.
Yeah,
no other
I've seen it also.
Mhm.